a growing number of Americans are landing in Vietnam and realizing something is very wrong. Their flights were booked, their bags were packed, some even had a visa in hand, yet they were stopped, delayed, or quietly turned away at immigration. Not because they broke the law, but because the rules changed and almost no one noticed. The problem is that most advice online is outdated. Blogs, videos, and even visa websites are still repeating information that worked years ago but no longer applies in 2026. And trusting that old advice is now one of the fastest ways to ruin a trip before it even begins. Vietnam didn't make a loud announcement. There was no big headline. Instead, the system shifted in small but critical ways, and Americans are getting caught in the gaps. In this video, we're breaking down what actually changed, why so many travelers are making the same mistakes, and how to avoid the errors that are costing people time, money, and sometimes entry itself. And honestly, this is just the beginning. At first glance, 2026 doesn't feel like a big turning point. There was no headline saying Vietnam rewrote its visa rules for Americans. No sudden ban, no dramatic announcement, and that's exactly why so many travelers are getting caught off guard. What actually changed wasn't the rulebook. It was how the rules are applied in real life. The visa system became stricter, quieter, and far less forgiving. Details that used to slide now stop applications cold. Processing timelines that once felt flexible now break entire travel plans. And assumptions based on past trips are suddenly working against people. Most Americans still think, "I've done this before, nothing changed." That confidence is where the trouble starts. Because Vietnam didn't remove options, it tightened the margins. Approval alone no longer guarantees a smooth arrival. Timing matters more. Accuracy matters more. Even tiny technical details now carry weight. And here's the part most travelers miss. The biggest risk in 2026 isn't rejection. It's delay. It's approval coming too late. It's showing up with a document that's technically valid, but practically useless at the airport. That gap between what people expect and how the system actually works is growing fast. And the confusion only gets worse when you look at how Americans think visas are issued in the first place. One of the biggest mistakes Americans still make is believing that visa on arrival works the way it always did. For years it felt simple. Show up, fill out a form, pay a fee, and walk through immigration. That memory is deeply burned into travel advice across the internet, and it's now one of the most dangerous assumptions you can make. The problem is that much of the content Americans trust is outdated. Old blog posts still rank on Google. YouTube videos from years ago keep getting views. Even some agencies continue promoting visa on arrival as a safe fallback, without explaining how limited and conditional it has become. What's rarely mentioned is that visa on arrival no longer exists as a casual option. It depends on pre-approval, specific airports, and paperwork that must be arranged in advance. Miss one step, and arrival turns into a dead end. Americans who rely on this advice often don't realize the risk until they're already in the air. Or worse, standing at the immigration counter. This is why Americans are especially vulnerable. Many have visited Vietnam before, or know someone who did, and assume the same process still applies. But Vietnam has quietly shifted its focus away from arrival-based visas, and that leads directly to the system Vietnam now prioritizes instead. Without much noise, the e-visa became the default path for Americans traveling to Vietnam. On paper, it looks simple. Apply online, upload your documents, wait a few days, get approved. For many travelers, that's where the thinking stops, and that's where the trouble begins. What changed in 2026 isn't the existence of the e-visa, but how closely it's examined. Behind the scenes, applications are being checked more carefully. Names are matched more strictly to passports. Entry points are enforced instead of treated as suggestions. Even small formatting issues now matter in ways they didn't before. Processing expectations also shifted. Travelers still see 3 to 5 business days and assume that's a guarantee. In reality, that timeline is fragile. One small issue can push an application into quiet delay, with no warning and no clear explanation. And here's the part many Americans don't realize until it's too late. E-visa approval does not equal smooth entry. Immigration officers can, and do, verify every detail again on arrival. If something doesn't line up, approval won't save you. The system isn't broken, it's precise. And when precision becomes the rule, even one tiny mistake can cancel everything. In 2026, most visa problems don't come from big mistakes. They come from small ones, the kind Americans don't even realize they made. Passport validity is one of the most common traps. Many travelers check the expiration date and stop there, without realizing how strict the remaining validity window has become. Being just weeks short can quietly kill an application or trigger problems at entry. Names are another major issue. Middle names missing, extra spaces, hyphens removed. The e-visa system now expects an exact match with your passport, not a close enough version. Something as simple as a spacing error can flag your visa for review, or worse, rejection. Entry ports cause problems too. Travelers select one airport, then change flights later, assuming it doesn't matter. In 2026, it does. Showing up at the wrong entry point has stopped more than a few travelers cold. Even photos are being scrutinized. Many Americans upload the correct photo, but cropped wrong, resized incorrectly, or edited in ways the system no longer accepts. None of these errors feel serious. That's why they're so dangerous. Enforcement is stricter, and tolerance is lower. And here's the frustrating part. Even travelers who do everything right can still run into trouble. For years, Americans were told the same thing. Apply and wait 3 to 5 business days. That timeline is still displayed in many places, but in real life, it's no longer something you can rely on. Processing times now fluctuate quietly. During peak travel seasons, applications stack up fast. Holidays, summer travel, and end-of-year rushes slow everything down. What used to take a few days can stretch into a week or more, often without updates or explanations. The system doesn't always reject applications. It simply pauses them. This creates a dangerous pattern. Many Americans book flights first, assuming the visa will catch up later. When delays hit, panic sets in. Some approvals arrive hours before departure. Others don't arrive at all, leaving travelers stuck with non-refundable tickets and no clear answers. The riskiest part is the silence. There's usually no warning that something is wrong until time runs out. No alerts, no status changes, just waiting. In 2026, timing is everything. Applying late isn't just stressful, it's a gamble. That pressure is exactly why many travelers turn to express processing as a solution. But trying to fix the problem quickly often creates a new one. When delays hit, many Americans start searching for a faster solution, and that's where express and emergency processing enters the picture. On the surface, it sounds like a lifesaver. Pay more, move to the front of the line, get your visa quickly. But in 2026, this option is widely misunderstood. There are faster processing paths, but not all of them are official. Some go through recognized channels. Others rely on third-party services that promise results they don't fully control. The problem is that many travelers can't tell the difference, especially under time pressure. Reports claim outcomes vary wildly depending on who you use. Some travelers receive approvals in hours. Others pay premium fees and see no improvement at all. And in a few cases, rushed applications appear to create more scrutiny, not less, especially when details don't line up perfectly. What makes this risky is expectation. Americans often assume express processing guarantees success. It doesn't. It only speeds up review, and faster review can still end in delay or denial. This gray area has sparked growing frustration online. Forums, comment sections, and review pages are full of conflicting stories, and that brings up a much bigger controversy surrounding how visas are being sold and promoted right now. As confusion grows, so does the number of websites offering to fix the problem. Many Americans searching for Vietnam visas in 2026 are funneled toward lookalike sites that closely resemble official pages. They use similar colors, similar language, and even similar URLs, making it hard to tell what's real and what's just well-designed marketing. One common assumption is that paying more means better results. In reality, higher fees often buy convenience, not protection. Some agencies simply resubmit the same information you provide, with no added influence over approval. And when mistakes happen, the consequences fall on the traveler, not the service. There have also been unverified reports online of visas being flagged or voided because of agency errors, incorrect data entry, wrong entry ports, or mismatched personal details. While these cases aren't officially confirmed, they're mentioned often enough to raise concern among frequent travelers. The hardest part is conflicting advice. One source says something works, another says it doesn't. Americans are left guessing which version of the truth applies to them. And even when everything seems settled, even after approval, there's one final step many travelers completely overlook. For many Americans, the moment the visa gets approved feels like the finish line. But in 2026, approval is only permission to travel, not a guarantee of a smooth entry. Immigration officers are now checking details more closely than before. Names, passport numbers, visa validity dates, and length of stay are often reviewed carefully at the counter. If anything looks unclear or inconsistent, travelers may be pulled aside for additional questions or delays, even with an approved visa. There's also confusion around documentation. Some Americans rely entirely on a digital copy stored on their phone, assuming that's always enough. Others bring a printed visa but overlook clarity, readability, or completeness. While procedures can vary by airport, reports suggest that having a clean, clear, and accessible copy of your visa can prevent unnecessary friction. The key misunderstanding is this: visa approval confirms eligibility, not entitlement. Entry decisions are still made in real time, at the border, by immigration officers. That distinction catches many travelers off guard, especially those who feel confident after receiving approval. And this becomes even more important for Americans planning longer stays in Vietnam. Longer visas have given many Americans a false sense of security. A 90-day visa sounds generous, but in 2026 it's also one of the most misunderstood parts of Vietnam's system. One common confusion is the difference between entry and stay. Some travelers assume a 90-day visa allows unlimited flexibility within that period. In reality, the clock starts based on the terms of the visa, not personal travel plans. Exiting and re-entering doesn't always reset anything, unless the visa explicitly allows it. This is where overconfidence creeps in. Americans who've done quick visa runs in the past often expect the same workaround to apply, but reports suggest those strategies no longer work as smoothly. Border crossings that once felt routine now come with more questions, longer waits, or unexpected refusals. There's also growing online discussion about tighter monitoring of frequent entries and long stays. While nothing official confirms sweeping changes, many travelers say patterns that once went unnoticed are now drawing attention. None of this means long stays are impossible. It means assumptions are risky. Vietnam's system in 2026 appears designed for clarity, not improvisation. So what's the safest way for Americans to handle Vietnam visas now, without gambling on outdated habits or rumors? By 2026, the smartest approach to Vietnam visas isn't about shortcuts. It's about mindset. The first shift Americans need to make is timing. Applying earlier than you think you need to isn't overkill anymore. It's protection. Extra days give you room to fix small issues, respond to delays, and avoid last-minute panic that leads to rushed decisions. Next comes accuracy. Every detail matters more than it used to. Names, numbers, dates, and documents should be checked obsessively, not casually. The goal isn't speed, it's alignment. When everything matches perfectly, the system tends to move smoothly. Another key mistake is relying on memory. A trip from years ago doesn't reflect how things work now. Even recent experiences may not apply. Treat every application as if it's your first, and question advice that starts with, "This is how it used to work." Preparation beats speed every time. Rushing increases errors, and errors create delays. A slower, cleaner application often finishes faster than a rushed one that needs fixing. When Americans approach the process this way, most problems disappear before they begin. And finally, there's one mistake that causes more regret than all the others combined. More than any technical error, more than any form or document, the biggest mistake Americans make with Vietnam visas in 2026 is waiting until the last minute. This mistake usually comes from confidence. Travelers trust old experiences, stories from friends, or trips they took years ago. They assume the system still has flexibility built in, that if something goes wrong, there will be time to fix it. In 2026, that safety net is largely gone. Waiting late compresses everything. Processing delays feel heavier. Small errors become emergencies. And bad advice becomes much harder to recognize when time is running out. What could have been a simple correction turns into a canceled flight or a ruined itinerary. This is where all the earlier problems connect. Outdated visa on arrival advice, overconfidence with long stays, rushed express services, agency mistakes, entry day stress. Almost all of it traces back to starting too late. Vietnam's visa system now rewards preparation and punishes assumptions. It's not designed to adapt to last-minute changes. It's designed to follow exact details on a fixed timeline. Americans who succeed aren't luckier. They're earlier, calmer, and better prepared. And that difference is what separates smooth entry from instant regret. Vietnam didn't suddenly become harder to visit in 2026. It became stricter, quieter, and far less forgiving of assumptions. The rules didn't disappear. They tightened. And for Americans, that shift changed everything. The good news is that most visa problems aren't random. They're preventable. Delays, rejections, and entry issues usually come down to timing, details, and relying on information that no longer applies. When those factors are handled carefully, the process works. Vietnam remains an incredible place to visit, live, and explore. But the system now rewards travelers who prepare instead of rushing, who verify instead of assuming, and who stay ahead instead of reacting late. If you're planning a trip, stay informed. Double-check every source. Question advice that feels too easy or outdated, and above all, plan smarter. Because in 2026, preparation isn't optional. It's the difference between arriving relaxed or not arriving at all.